So now we have this combined Kestrel and Avalonia app running together. We now have a web server that's running inside of the Windows app. Next, we need to form a communication layer between these two. It's going to be a bit more complicated than it might sound, or it might be very easy. We'll find out. But the goal will be to make some interface to act like a SolidWorks client, do some basic calls, and then check we can pass data actively between these two. So let's take a look at how we do that. My first thought is to use dependency injection. So we're just going to start there and see if this works. I'm pretty sure, because we're making this builder on this thread, and we're spinning up Avalonia here, I'm sure we can access this builder where we need to get access to the services and pass them through. So the first thing we want to do is on the host, we want to install the dependency. So we'll probably have to right click, manage NuGet packages. And in here, we want Microsoft dependency injection. We want to add it to the host. So we'll click add here and install. And then let's just make sure if we edit the CS proj that it hasn't added a version number, which it hasn't, so that's good. And now we have dependency injection. If you're unsure or can't remember what to do, you can take a look in the app. And inside of here, we basically start a collection, add a view model, and then build the services. So this is what we need to do. So in the host, we're going to do it up here. For now, we just dump everything in here and we'll work our way through. Now, instead of creating a service collection, which maybe we'll do, we can just use the web application create builder. We'll already have a services because the Kestrel and the ASP.NET already use dependency injection. So they already have this built into the kind of platform. So if we go to the builder here, you should find services already. So this is literally at the point where we have the service collection. So instead of making a new service like this, we've already got this service collection right here. So you can see we've got a service collection. So instead we can just add a view model. So before we can add a view model, we actually need a view model. So in here, we've got one here. So for now, let's just use the main window view model, I guess. Let's just use the existing one and we'll try and update the text. So we can do add singleton, and it can just be a main view model. And this will be inject services, and this is where we can share the data. We probably want as well an actual SolidWorks service, not just a view model, but this is proving the communication side of things, not necessarily the actual fact it's a view model. Now, because we are injecting the services here and then building here, we need to access this web app. So we're going to have to make this web app static. So it's a web application. So let's just make a private web application. We'll make it nullable and make it null to start with. Or I'll tell you what, let's make it a public static instead. Web application, web app. And we can do a private set as well. We don't want that to be overridden. And then here we can just change this to web app. And now we can refer to it like this. And we have that. And this is one of the rare instances where a static is really the correct thing to do. So this is a single instance. It's not very good for unit testing and dependency injection, but for this exact circumstance, this is exactly what we want. So now once we've compiled the web app, we can access this inside of here like we would a normal dependency injection. So now instead of just adding a new view model, we can use the dependency injection, but the one that's actually shared and part of the Kestrel server. So we're going to lose some of the benefits of having a dependency injection in the Avalonia app here, because we can't then just do new view models that just automatically get discovered unless we do maybe some more work. But we do allow that in the web app. So we need to really pick which application, either the Kestrel service or the Avalonia, where we want the most natural dependency injection to work, and leave the other one in a inversion of control situation, basically. So by accessing this static instance and getting the required service, this is then inversion of control. It's an anti-pattern that you want to typically avoid. But again, it's not that it's a problem for us, as long as we understand that one of our two applications is going to get the full dependency injection. And in this case, I'm going to make the Avalonia side of it be the one where we fetch into. So for that, we can just say program.webapp, and then we can get into its services and now get requested service. So you see this in, I believe, the original, in like, even when you do it the normal way. I believe you see it in here. So you're kind of doing it here, and that's just because at this stage, you're not inside of the application that's creating stuff. So we have to tell it where the services are. But the difference with this is the dependency injection works automatically for us. And we might find it works so long as we, in fact, yeah, it would work, because so long as all the dependencies are inside of the collection and we fetch it from the collection, that's the only thing. We have to use the inversion of control like this to fetch any instance inside of Avalonia. We can't do it automatically. Then, other than that, it should work the same. So we'll see that as we grow this application anyway. So if we request the service like this, this should work. Oh yeah, that's nullable, so we need to make sure we've got it. And now we should have the dependency injection for the view model fetched from the same one that's inside the web app. Now the web app in here, instead of just returning hello world, we could return hello, and then to prove we have the view model, we can access the view model in here. And that's quite simple with this override. So what we have here is, instead of just passing nothing in, this is like a constructor to this action, if you will. It'll be a controller action this is generating. So in here, we can actually do this new tag called from services, and this is how ASP.NET Core injects dependencies. And then once we've done that, we need to tell it what it is. So this will be a main window view model. And then when we have that, we can now pass in the view model. We'll just have to wrap that, I believe, in the constructor. There we go. And then inside here now, we should be able to get the view model. And we can access the greeting. So if that works, this map has got dependency injection to pull the view model, which will have a greeting, which is just welcome to Avalonia. Inside of the application here, we also get the same view model. So we should be able to now bind the view. So let's just bind the view here, which it already does. So we've already got the greeting. So now if we run this, we should have the same view model for both. So this is obviously the view model here, and this is the view model here. So you can see we've got the same text. So now the key will be to change the data in the view model from both sides potentially, and see them change in each one. So in here, we are going to do a stack panel. We'll just have a button with a command, and we might as well then have a binding, change me or increment value command. And in the view model, we'll just do private increment value. This can be a relay command, greeting, just do private int I equals 0 or count greeting equals new value count. That can be as simple as that. This needs to be a setter as well now. This can increment that. So let's start with that way, and let's see if clicking that button allows us to increment the value. Now we need to improve that UI a little bit. We didn't even take a look at that. So let's do horizontal alignment center, vertical alignment center, and then the button, same thing, horizontal alignment center, content equals increment value. So very crude UI, but let's see if that works. Now if we have the window open here, we can increment here, and that's doing nothing, and that's probably because we haven't done any of the actually I'm not sure what it is yet, but let's take a look. We have in the view model, this is actually running, so let's just check that. Yeah, so that works there. That's because this is public. There's no value, so we need to do a private string greeting. Make that an observable property, and that will now have the UI events to actually update the UI. There we go. And then in here, we're not going to get any UI, but if we refresh, oh, we didn't even do an increment. This will now add up. And if we refresh this page, you can see the values match. So obviously we could make the web call automated, but we don't care about that. It's nothing to do with view models. We don't care the other way around. So that's how we've changed the data on the view model side, which is fairly easy. Now let's just confirm we can change it on the opposite side, which at the minute, the only place we do it is directly baked in here. So this is where we need to spin off all this mapping off to a separate class to handle all the mapping and the services, and then this needs to bounce off to another dependency injection. But for now it's right here, so considering it's here, let's just do this. So now we have the method that we're invoking, and inside of here now, we could also change the string here, but you'll see a key difference here, which will be if we do viewModel.incrementValueCommand.execute, you'll see a key issue with view models, and why we're using them, or why we're using dependency injection rather, is for thread safety. So every time we fetch the page, it should try and increment. So if we load up the local page, you can see it says 0 and refresh. So that's actually working. And you can see every time we refresh the page, it's incrementing the UI. Now, I didn't think that would work, primarily because this is on a separate thread, and we want to be incrementing the view models on the UI thread. So this, in theory, shouldn't work. So let's just try greeting equals test and see if that throws an error directly. Maybe the commands or this execute maybe is then breaking off to UI thread, whereas directly setting properties won't. No, that's working too. You'd usually access it via the static Avalonia.threading dispatcher.UI_thread.invoke, or invoke async, whichever you want, and then do something inside of here. So typically, this is where you'd invoke things in order to, do anything. But the problem with that is, once we've done that, we also need to await it as well. So you might have to do like invoke async, await, and then async this, and then return a value. So let's see if that still works. It should, but this would be the thread safe way of changing values. So if we refresh this, you can see it still works, and that's technically the safer way. Like we should be invoking on UI thread, because otherwise we could crash if we're not on the UI thread. So maybe the map get and bringing this in brings it into some thread safety, or maybe .NET's doing stuff we're unaware of at the minute, where you typically have to do this thread safety lock. So all the principles are working together well now. We have dependency injection in the Kestrel app. We have a way to access the Avalonia UI thread from inside Kestrel, as well as access to the view models or any dependency injection at all. Then on the opposite side, inside the Avalonia, we have access to the web app through inversion of control to get to the services and grab dependencies. So now what we want to do is just make sure everything we do between the two applications is done via dependency injection, via services. So we want to fetch services and invoke them. That's how we want this to work. In that case, the next logical thing we want to do is to make an actual service to start moving some of this stuff off. So these maps will go off to a helper method where we map all specific REST APIs to, of all the commands we want to do. And we want them to do nothing more than simply pulling in a dependency via this method and invoking a command. That's really all we want them to do. So let's start with a dependency that's going to be, I think really for now, just a monolithic SolidWorks dependency. So a SolidWorks host. So I'm actually going to call this probably a SolidWorks, or rather a batch process host, because the SolidWorks host really wants to be specific to anything that's actually dealing directly into SolidWorks, not just the layer on top. So we'll make a folder and we'll call this one SolidWorks. Well, we'll call it SolidWorks. In general, anything dealing with SolidWorks is going to be inside there. And we'll call this one the batch process host. This is the top level service we're going to use. We want to then inject this as a service. So in here, we'll have, again, I think a singleton. I don't think there's any reason for multiple instances of this host. So this can be a batch process host. And then in here, let's just make something useful. So let's just do a public string SolidWorks version, I guess. And this isn't necessarily a view model. This is just a raw service. We're not binding or expecting this to be a view model. This is just purely something to return. So in this instance, we're just going to return a SolidWorks 2025 V. We're just making up a string here. Or SP service pack 1.2, so just a complete random string. That could also then just be a simpler method like this. And now we could pull that in from both. So save always doing just the one, we should be able to do from services, batch process host. And then in here now, instead of doing increment value, what we could do is say view model dot greeting equals, and then just get the host dot SolidWorks version. And to be honest, if it's a method, it should probably say get SolidWorks version. And then it returns the SolidWorks version there. So let's just see if that works. So obviously that'll increment the value there. I'm running this, then updates it to that value. So we can click this to increment that. We can refresh this page to set it to this. So this is working ideal, to be honest. This is exactly what we want. So now we have a specific batch process host. So this we want to flush out with real operations, things we now want to do. Now there won't be any connected property as such in here because this host is actually going to live inside of SolidWorks. We're going to inject this exact application. This entire app that runs will run inside of SolidWorks. So this will have direct access to it. So there isn't so much a connection. If we're in here, we actually have access to SolidWorks. So all we want is things like the get version. And then let's just start with something like a public void. So let's have one that's get active. I'm trying to think what to call it. Get active file list, which is just the open file, or get active file. Let's start with just that. And that could be, well, in fact, we probably want a class then to store some information. So we'll have another one, SolidWorks add class, and this will be a SolidWorks file details. Again, these can all get renamed as we see. This will be a public string, and this could be a record. And so we can do the easier way of just doing this. A single line. And then what do we want here? We will want a string, I guess, file name. And for now, let's just leave it as file name, just so we have the class ready. This can now return the SolidWorks file details. And this can return a new one with a file name. And I'm just going to paste the real path and then escape these quotes. So this is a path to my desktop with a real file on. We'll just simulate that for now. That will be returned to there. So the active file will always be this. And then we could change this. We could change other things, but that will get us a single file for now. As well as getting the active file, we probably want to get active file references. So this would be then a list of file details. And this would be get active file references. And we return a new. A new list, and then inside of here, new list. And now we can just do a new file details, and I'm going to make a list completely different. So we're just going to say, well, in fact, let's just do, say that. Or I'll tell you what, let's actually read the file details for now. That makes more sense. So for that, we can do system.io.directory.getFiles. We want to use this file path here. That will give us a list of strings. And that'll just be every file in that folder, which is basically this one. We want to kind of exclude the JPEGs. They're pre-saved images. We just want the SLD PRT and SLD ASM and SLD DRT. So we'll need to do probably a filter on that. So in there, and then top level only, we could leave that in for the sake of it. This wants to be SLD DRW, I believe it was. SLD ASM, SLD PRT. And then from them, we've got all the files and we just need to cast them to this. So we would just do on all of them, dot select new SolidWorks files, and we would just do the path in like that. And then dot to list, I guess, or to array. Get rid of the quotes. And probably can get rid of the to array. Yes, we can. There we go. We have the filter on those files with the top level only, and then we select on them and cast them to a file details. So that will actually get real data in terms of just a static folder for now, and we're going to pretend that's the active file, and then this is all the items in there. So that'll simulate something slightly real. So these are one way. This is like calling methods, which we can do. And then the other way is events. So let's just leave it at calling methods for now. And what do we have? We now need to integrate this back up. Oh, let's just dump this into the view for now. So this is only going to be static code really, but just to prove we have it, we have a list box, I guess, and item source can be binding. And then this is where the main view model now will need to actually get that. So this will be a private list or observable collection of, and then it's going to be SolidWorks file details. And this can be observable property. And this can be active files list for now. And then that wants to be never nullable, so there's always something. And then on the constructor, so on loaded, we want to then probably just fetch that list from dependency. And this is where we'll see, we should be able to inject dependencies because this is the view model. So if we injected, say, the SolidWorks, or rather the batch process host, into here, this dependency injection should still work. And I'll tell you what, instead of loading for now, we'll just literally call batch process host.get references. So this will just get called once. This one's going to return a list, so that needs to be a new observable collection with that inside. So that should now, if we bind to active files list, and compile, we should actually see that list of real things that are on the desktop. And I see nothing. So let's see if this is even getting invoked. So let's catch here. So this is getting invoked. The active files list. There's nothing, so that must mean we have the filter set up wrong. So let's just delete that filter for now. Do star.star. And see if that works. Maybe I've got the search pattern wrong, although I thought it was correct. Yep, so that's now got all the files. There's now the UI, just dumping them all in. But the question is, why is the filter not right? Not that that matters, it's just a bit of temporary code. So probably just for now, let's just dump all the items in. There's no real need to filter that for now. In the UI, let's just refresh this build. So you can see it's not working in the design time, but there's no constructor found for the designer, so it's not going to show in there. And that's because of this. So for that, we'd need to do a constructor that does this with a new batch process host for now. And if we compile, we'll see it here. Now we can limit the height to, I don't know, 200. We can do a listbox.item template, I believe it is. Data template, label, content binding, and then what do we want? File name. And this is where we actually want to get the file name of the file name. But again, this is just purely for visual. So that shows us we've got the values from a real folder. And probably want to set the width as well. There we go, that'll do. That's all we want it for, just to show that we have stuff. So I think we are good to now try and attempt to actually consume this service in the real application. So the only other thing we'd need to do thinking about that is, now we have some form of method. So this, we need to expose this as a command in the, let's close all these down first, find out where we are. Inside of here, we need to now break out these get methods and map them to other things so that we can send the data back to our primary application and fetch these through the network. So that's what we'll do next. We'll enhance this and we will map some URLs so that we can actually do, say, localhost that / get files, something like that, or get active files. And then return the data, deserialize it, and do what we need to do. So to do that, we'd have to have a core project where these two are sharing. So at the minute, we don't have an actual core project because everything is dumped in here. So we're going to have to separate all that out, make a core project. These two are going to share between them. And then things like the API classes are going to have to live in the core. So there's a bit of work to do there on the architecture.